And captions. Okay, Mark, so captions are now on.
Thank you.
Beat you to it. Okay, well, good morning, everybody. Glad to see you could all join us this morning. I wanted to, before I get into our usual welcoming and everything, I just want to tell you that the meeting's going to be a little different today. We're pleased to have Nicole and to hear about the work she's doing. And I know she kind of wanted to have a dialogue with us. So we're going to give her as much time as she needs and then see if we got time for the updates at the end. So I hope that's acceptable to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's fine.
And then we have a couple of new people. Jermaine, you want to introduce yourself? Met Jermaine the other day. Well, we actually, I guess, met some time ago, but
Yes.
met the other day and had a really great conversation. Glad you could join us this morning.
Yeah, appreciate that opportunity, guys. My name is Jermaine Biscetta. I'm with a company called Alluvian Communications. We're an ILEC that's part of the Gila River Tribal Communications out here in Chandler. My role is essentially just continue building the economic growth of our interconnect of the technology from Chandler all the way down to Nogales. What was that?
I think he was asking, who are you with?
No, Alluvian Communications. We're part of the Gila River.
Oh, awesome.
Oops.
Okay. Well, thanks, Jermaine. And
Thank you.
I will be in touch with you after this meeting. And do we have anybody else new this morning? Well, there were a couple of other people who had planned to be here today. I don't see them. So let's move on to the meeting. Again, thanking our sponsors, Care First Health Plan, satellite broadcasters. Don't see him much anymore. He has conflicting meetings every Monday. United Way, Valley of the Sun, United Way, Khajiit, and Triad. And again, we're looking for more sponsors, and sooner the better, frankly. So moving on with the agenda this morning. Let's see. So just a reminder that we'll be kibitzing with colleagues after this meeting. So if any of you want to stay online and chat, ask questions, have discussion or whatever, we'll be online, and it'll be 10 minutes or it'll be an hour, depending on what people have to say. So with that, let's move on to some quick announcements. Cindy, we have a practitioners meeting coming up. Is it October 6th?
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, and then the SciTech STEM Innovation Summit is tomorrow. If any of you still want to come, and Kirk, you want to say anything about that? Kirk, you there? So I'm curious how many. I know that Cindy and I will be there, and Janet, and how many any others that are going to be attending tomorrow?
I'm not sure how influential I can be on the STEM kids when I can't find my mute buttons. Yeah, as I don't know if it was who was saying that it's one of the most enjoyable events of the year. Yeah, SciTech Institute, Foundation of the Arizona Tech Council, hosted at the Arizona Science Center. Probably our biggest STEM event of the year. Looking forward to it. Everybody's excited. It'll be the second time we've actually had it in person, but really the first full year since everybody's kind of done with COVID. So it'll be a great event. And of course, Steve's going to be there officially carrying the AZBSN sign. We gave him a spot at the Arizona Data Center table. And Cindy's smiling. I see Cindy's poster back there. This is my last year's poster. I'm still working on this year's poster, and of course pull all my favorites at Alpha Graphics to get the board done in one day. So Cindy, you want to talk about what you're doing there? Or
Oh yeah,
Janet?
I'm just coming up with Janet to promote the Affordable Connectivity Program. So we'll just
and Steve will have stuff there, a brochure their brochure there too at our table?
You bet. You bet.
Awesome.
And then Janet, you're going to be there, obviously. You wanna
Yes, I
just say
love,
anything?
love, love this event. I get to promote telehealth, which is the best job on our team. But most of all, this is where I really enjoy being able to encourage students to know that there's something for everybody in healthcare, and that there's a lot of non-traditional jobs in healthcare. You know, to be an artist, to be a graphic artist, to be a video engineer. You know, there's a lot of jobs that students haven't thought about. Everybody knows about being a doctor and a nurse, and I'm there to tell them about the rest of the story.
That's awesome.
And Janet,
will be
you might
there.
want to just mention to people that not only do students attend, but they also have teachers and others who attend that event.
Yes, that's why it's a great place to do some outreach for ACP. You know, there's counselors, there's teachers, there's everybody. And not just, you know, my favorite handout from the FCC is the 10 ways that you can help. And this is our target audience for that, the teachers and the counselors. There's things that people like us can do to help encourage signups for ACP. So it's a great target market for that.
Okay, thank you, Janet. So moving on, Cindy, you want to talk about the digital literacy forum, Pima County digital literacy forum coming up?
Sure, yeah, on Tuesday, October 4th from 10 to 12, we're having a digital literacy forum. We're going to talk about, we have a national speaker to kind of set the stage, a keynote stage, and then we're going to have breakout sessions that deal with older adult digital literacy, digital health literacy, online safety, and workforce. So a lot of good speakers. Janet's going to be one of them. I can't think of anyone else from this group, but yeah, it should be a really good. What we're trying to do with that is to encourage to let the community know how important digital literacy is, so that we can start building community partnerships with Pima County to develop some new and more sustainable digital literacy training programs.
And that is virtual.
It is. It's entirely virtual. I'm going to send the invite out, or have you sent it out to the?
I have, but I'll send it again.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd appreciate that. Okay.
And then the Arizona Digital Inclusion, Aaron, that I believe that's you, a celebration summit coming up. Aaron, are you still there?
Sorry, I was talking to my son who's getting ready to leave for school. Can you repeat whatever you needed from me? My
Well, I was
apologies.
just saying that you want to just tell people about the Digital Inclusion Celebration Summit coming up.
Absolutely. Sorry, he was just getting ready for school, and mom thinks first. Yeah, so the summit is Monday, October 3rd. It is a 5-hour or so summit. We are thrilled to be able to showcase so many of the organizations and groups, both from this group and some outside of this group. Common Sense, AZ Strut, learning.com. There's like 20. I'm really excited about it. We also have a really big announcement that we're making that morning with some of the folks from Central AZ. So I'm thrilled with that. And I think one of the most important parts of the summit is that we have representation from across the entirety of the state. So it isn't just one geographic region that's represented, it's really everyone. So I'm thrilled with that. If you haven't signed up yet, there are still spaces open. Invite your colleagues. It should be just really a celebration. I think right now we have just over 300 folks that are registered. So it should be a great day. We would love to have you there.
Okay, thanks.
Absolutely.
And
I should have said, Angie T. Bennett is the opening speaker from NTIA. She's doing 10 minutes. Actually, she's doing the exact same speech that she's giving this Wednesday at the Digital Inclusion Summit in Washington. And then Angela Seifer is wrapping the day. So she's our last speaker of the day. So, sorry.
And again, you all should have the link. I sent it in the last update about this meeting and follow up to the meeting from last week. So you should all have the link for that. And then the Pima County Library Telehealth Demonstration Initiative. That's Mala and Janet and Michelle, maybe, or Cindy.
Janet, do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, let me just, I'm just gonna jump in real quick. It's not,
Okay.
it's not me, Mark. It's Ken Zambos, who's our program manager. So Mala can give you all the details.
Okay. Okay, Mala, you're on.
Okay, the program is, the inauguration is on the 1st of October. That is the Saturday, 9 to 12. We have a number of things going on at the time there. We'll have different tables. We have the Lions Eye Clinic there. They are going to come and do some eye tests for whoever wants it. But most of all, we're going to demonstrate all of the equipment, the backpack kit that the telehealth program will have, both at Ajo and Aravaca libraries. And it will showcase how this would work in real life situation. There are a lot of other health screening using that, and some other tables that would have very interesting health information. And of course, the added attraction is the band that's going to be there to entertain folks that have finished walking around the tables and watching the demonstration, etc. Janet, do you want to add anything more to it?
That sounds great. We're very excited. And as you know, we've been working on this a long time, and we've got a lot of great folks that are going to be there just to meet the community of Aravaca and share resources. And yes, band is woohoo. I mean, that's fun. And it's a big draw. We were told if we can get the band, everybody would come. So we're expecting everybody to come. The population's 1,000 in Aravaca. And we're hoping we're going to be counting. That's for sure. And I'm a little bit nervous because we ordered some beautiful bags that we can distribute, and it's really going to be a great day. I can't believe it's finally here.
Great. Okay, and then Chicanos por la Causa, and Robert, I don't know if you've been involved with that particular project, but Common Sense, you guys have been leading that. I don't know, do we have Elena, are you online today? I didn't see you.
She's in DC, I think.
Okay, and I don't think Drew is here today either.
No, actually, I'm here. Sorry.
Oh, good, Elena, there you go.
Sorry, yeah, here too. Sorry, I couldn't get off the camera button.
I couldn't catch the mute button. But Robert, you're welcome to talk about the event if you want.
Yeah, thank you, Alana. Yes, so we are having an event on October 7th. It's going to be at Central Park at our downtown location. So this location is in the community. We have lots of events there. So we're really looking forward. We're partnering with Common Sense Media, AZ Strut, Cox Communications, and we're having a lot of other partners there as well. A lot of our programs will be showcasing their stuff there. We'll be showcasing our VR program, which is done by our workforce development. It's a pretty cool program. They show kids from just right out of school how to work on components. We partner with Intel and Boeing, and then basically after they get the training, they're able to get jobs there at a pretty nice salary. So it should be great. We'll be signing people up for ACP. We'll be handing out computers to those families that need them. We'll have some food there. We'll have a DJ. Should be a good time. But I think Elena, you sent out all the handouts and all that. So if anyone needs any information, just let any of us know, and we'll send you the handouts or any other information you may need.
Okay, any questions for Elena or Robert? Okay, well, as you can all see, and as you all know, we have people doing really phenomenal, amazing kinds of stuff. Thank you all for all the hard work that you guys do. Really, really phenomenal. Okay, so any other announcements that I've missed? Going once, going twice. Okay, if there's no other announcements, I want to jump into, as I mentioned, that we're going to do a little bit different with the agenda today, that rather than getting into our updates right now, want to jump to Nicole. I know she has to leave, I think, no later than 8:30. and I'm sure she probably has a lot to say. I think you all, most of you know Nicole, who was with the State Library, did a great job with getting Connect Arizona going, and now has a new job. And I'm going to let her tell you what that job is and turn it over to Nicole. Nicole, do you need to share anything? Should I stop sharing?
Yes, please. Hey, good morning, everybody. It's good to join you all again. I'm Nicole Umayim, if we haven't met. And, like Steve said, I was previously working for the past 5 years with the fantastic Arizona State Library Archives and Public Records as a digital inclusion consultant. With the passing of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act, with a lot of money coming federally for broadband and digital equity initiatives, I had the opportunity to join the federal government with the NTIA to support broadband infrastructure programs in Arizona. So I want to talk a little bit about some of those programs that are available for our state here, a little bit about my role, but these slides have a lot of text, and you can all review them at a different time. So I'd really want to emphasize just a little bit of a open discussion at the end here to get your input about all of these different processes and see if we can clear up confusion and make some plans for how we're going to bring internet to every single household in Arizona. So just confirming, you can see a PowerPoint slide, yes?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so my title is a federal program officer. In this role with NTIA, we manage federal grants that are coming to the state of Arizona, but at the same time, our more important role is to act as the liaison between all broadband stakeholders. So that's all of you, all of the communities you serve, everyone in Arizona, the liaison between stakeholders and the federal government. We also act as technical support for the different entities that are doing this work, that are either using the funds or are planning to use the funds in some capacity. And the overall success of all broadband infrastructure law broadband programs.
So Nicole, before you move on, or maybe you're going to touch on this, that you were working quite a bit with Jeff, who unfortunately has moved on, and maybe you want to talk about that later.
Yeah, well, we could talk about that now. We are in a little bit of a transition state as the state of Arizona is identifying a new broadband program officer. And that's a really key role for all this incoming funding as the administrative entity for these federal funds. So it's really that office that's determining how this money is getting allocated. And there's no, there's a number of factors before we know the exact dollar amount, but there's estimates of anywhere between $850 million up to even $1.7 billion. So it is really key that we get some leadership installed here. But I have, like many of you, I've been fortunate enough to work with Jeff over the years and have really appreciated his perspective and his hard work in really amplifying our local service providers and just communities on the ground. And that's really something that I'm proud to represent.
Okay, I'm sorry to distract you, but thank you.
No worries. And in this role, I do have to use our federal cleared slides, with a lot of text, but, please let's just keep the dialogue going as we need. So speaking of the federal government, so NTIA, the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, is located within the Department of Commerce. And that's an executive branch that's responsible for advising the president on telecommunications and information policy issues. So there's a number of different programs that are related to expanding internet access, as well as the use of federal spectrum, and an emphasis on inspiring innovation and economic growth. as I've learned over the past 2 months in this position, there's a lot of other activities under this department, including NOAA, so looking at oceanic and atmospheric health, as well as FirstNet, which is the National Public Safety Network, which is where a lot of important early broadband conversations started and continue to run.
Nicole, may I ask a question concerning item 2? What does that mean, expanding the use of federal spectrum?
Yep. So in conjunction with FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, spectrum is, a finite resource that's allocated for a lot of different purposes, or in some cases, there's portions of the spectrum that are available for telecommunications. So NTIA is able to help with that auction process and that assigning of different uses. And it's their engagement with international stakeholders, as well as the FCC, who's on the regulatory side of this spectrum, that's able to kind of make it, make changes about that availability.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, this agency does all sorts of things, and I'm glad I get to work on one piece of it. Okay, so for really for this reason, NTIA is actually very well positioned to be administering this unprecedented amount of federal funding for broadband. They've got some really great partners at the state level and the federal level and the international level. And there's an emphasis on making sure that we're really empowering all of America to take advantage of these investments in infrastructure and thinking into the future. There's also, as a federal government, like I mentioned, there is that emphasis on collaboration, as well as government to government relations with our tribal nations as well. So we, in this group, we know, we often discuss the many benefits and really the necessity of broadband funding in all of our lives. But today I wanted to talk about, what are these different pots of money that are available through NTIA. If we've been, I hear a little bit of an echo, but if we can mute that, it's probably louder in my headphones than it is for all of you. But the largest program that's administered by NTIA is the BEAD program, which stands for Broadband Equity Access and Deployment. And I know that this group has talked a lot about some of these programs in the past, but there are 3 other broadband programs that are relevant to Arizona that are a result of this federal funding. That includes the Digital Equity Act, as well as the Tribal Connectivity Amendments, which adds an additional $2 billion to the $1 billion that was allocated for tribal broadband, and the Middle Mile program. And this one is actually, that deadline is September 30th. So there's a lot of flurry right now around getting these Middle Mile applications in. But today we'll talk about BEAD and digital equity. BEAD is everything involved in getting that backbone, smart engineering to all parts of the country and all territories, as well as the adoption measures for people to be able to use the internet. So let's see. So like I mentioned, FPOs are really this in this interesting role as a support and an administrative authority for this federal funding. We're really the main points of contact to support coordination of all these different programs that are going on, as well as non-federal funding that states and other awardees need to be taking into account for these large comprehensive plans for broadband and for digital equity. So that is to say that I'm really going to be relying on this group and others to get connected with as many stakeholders as I possibly can. The state will be, the state is actually required to do really extensive stakeholder engagement. And at the same time, FPOs are engaging with these same groups, making sure that all of those priorities are reflected in the BEAD and the digital equity plans. And we have, ways to kind of confirm and to reevaluate along the way. So we're heavily involved in the state's planning, initial planning phases, the proposal phases all the way through implementation. We're really happy to say that all 56 states and territories have submitted their BEAD and their DE planning applications. And I think I have a little, I want to get to my timeline slide here because the visual is pretty helpful. So we're at this point of getting ready to finalize and announce the awards for states and territories for both the BEAD and DE funding. And unfortunately, we can't give a specific deadline. It seems to keep getting pushed back. That we're aiming for. There's an initial push for before the end of September, but that's looking more like October. But once these planning funds are awarded, that starts the shot clock, so to speak, where the state has 270 days to come up with their 5-year plan for implementation. And of course, this has to account for all of the BEAD funding, but necessarily it's, because we have these actors, it's taking into account any other ongoing efforts. It will, of course, discuss the ongoing middle mile projects that the broadband office has made available. So whatever pieces are in place to get to every household connected. This is a wordy slide, so I'm going to stop there to see if there's any questions.
So Nicole, can you talk a little more about the workforce and job training kinds of programs that they're interested in? Or?
Mm-hmm. Well, this is a huge emphasis is on workforce. And I was able to attend a really fantastic conference with the National Tribal Telecommunications Association that really got me excited about preparing the next generation of the broadband workers. So networkers, tower climbers, project designers and managers, as well as all of those, all of the information professionals that will be coming out to help people use this. So thinking about library staff, of course, thinking about school administrators. So anyone in this, and as well as supporting programs that the state and local entities have to prepare America's workforce for this, for this new time. We'll get into some of the other covered populations, but there's a lot of potential for some really creative programs that are helping people take advantage of broadband. So that looks like things like helping with incarcerated populations to reskill as they prepare for reentry. It can look like, looking at an entire group of helpers like school, like school staff and technical support there to make sure that they're equipped, not only with helping parents and caregivers, but as well as delivering those services locally at the school. So it's pretty broad, but I will say the emphasis, the big wins that are on President Biden's Internet for All agenda are certainly workforce readiness. So states for planning, there's a $5 million that each state and territory that is awarded will get for this planning period. After that, there's a bit of a formula that is confirmed by the FCC's broadband maps, as well as their location maps, that this is an ongoing process. I know a lot of you in this room have been following this closely, but this is really the critical process to making sure we have an accurate funding allocation across states and territories. And that's based on population and number of unserved and underserved locations, as well as underserved community anchor institutions that have to be considered, but they're not necessarily part of this this formula allocation. So there's a lot of third-party entities that have been providing their best estimates, but this is what NTI is using that's relying on FCC's data to determine the funding that will be going to Arizona eventually. There's also, and I'm hoping to get some input from this group and others about the challenge process. So, the FCC is the one determining, who's making the broadband fabric available, who's, rectifying data from multiple sources, but there are multiple challenge timeframes that are available for stakeholders. So that is the state of Arizona, as well as other local entities that are able to challenge this data to make sure that we have a true account of what the need looks like. So I'm wondering if people do have some perspectives here. I know in talking with Jeff, he has a lot of concern about making sure that tribal lands are accurately accounted for, and that we don't have a misrepresentation of the amount of need with in terms of number of locations. And that's even before if those locations themselves have broadband.
Nicole, the biggest concern I have, my company does wireless internet. The biggest concern we have is that the NTIA funding excludes unlicensed wireless internet, which is the best tool for a lot of areas, especially across Arizona. Has there been any talk within the NTIA to eliminate that restriction?
I'm going to have to get some specific language for you on that exclusion. I can say that technically it's technology agnostic, and that if there's a case to be made for reaching every household in Arizona that it's including wireless solutions, that can be accounted for.
Well, I'll tell you, it's not technology agnostic, because my industry is making every effort. In fact, some states, California, for example, are passing legislation to force the NTIA to look at all technologies, not just fiber and licensed spectrum. The only exclusion that they've added in there since then is what's called PAL licenses in CBRS. But we're having to make $1 million investment in a very short period of time to defend territories because of this NTIA ruling. And that's obviously a burden on any business having to do that, so that we can exclude areas that we currently cover with services that are equivalent to what they're asking for. So I'm just curious if there's been any other talk besides the licensed spectrum within the NTIA, because I will tell you it's actively being pursued, from our industry side.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nicole, this is Mala. I put a question in the chat.
Sorry, I can't see that currently.
Okay, that's what I thought. So I wanted to read it out to you. In the challenge process, is the speed test sufficient to challenge, or are they looking for something more than that?
Well, so this first round of challenges is just, are there locations that should be on the map that aren't there? It's specifically, is there a location that could receive broadband service? And then after that, it is the type of broadband and that capacity. We'll have to refer you with the FCC, because they've got a huge team that's fielding all of these technical questions from providers and from local actors who are submitting this data. In general, they don't seem to think very favorably of most speed tests. They'd rather look at this provider submitted data that's looking at the possible speeds that are provided. But that's, ultimately that's on their decision. I think states can make a really strong case with some consistent data collection efforts that are, in coordination with different groups that are confirming, like, we've employed best methods. We're looking at this in our planning for deployment, and that's going to be a part of Arizona's decision making. But ultimately, it's this interplay with these two federal agencies that think about things very differently. And speed tests themselves don't seem to be sufficient for the FCC.
Nicole, to what level of granularity is the FCC looking for feedback? Because I know that they're highly dependent upon what's been submitted by the carriers to indicate if they've got coverage in particular areas. And they're talking about coverage, and like you just said, I mean, speed tests, there's all sorts of questions around that. And some states and some cities have actually conducted their own surveys, which have, I would say, in some cases I've seen, revealed some very accurate level data that is in direct conflict with what the providers are saying or carriers are saying in particular areas. But in terms of granularity, are we getting down to the census block, the census tract, a zip code? To what granularity will the FCC go down to enable that that appeal or that process to take place?
So it's reflected at the same level that the FCC has been collecting for the Form 477. So that's the census tract level. But of course, when we get to actual plans for deployment, we've got to look at the location level, and that's going to be, that's going to be the fun part for states in this whole planning process. And this is really going to be key for all of you to be engaging with the broadband office, with all of these, whatever information that you have that can help the state in making these decisions. And, like we mentioned, we know there's a lot of the middle mile projects that are currently going on. But, to be able to get to the goal of every single household, that's going to take a lot of eyes that are close to the ground that know this better than the FCC can really account for.
Yes, because there's some areas, even in urban areas, where many years ago there was funding to provide like a 10 megabit link into a small community area, and that's pretty much all that it still exists. So I'm looking forward to seeing what data comes forward and how the FCC reevaluates some of the mapping that's been provided. Thank you for your assistance.
So, a few tools that we do have is the ability to provide, sort of one-to-many informational sessions. So if this group is interested in a mapping specific discussion, especially as, this is really critical for the success of the program, we can see, well, I know that NTIA is on board to provide as much technical assistance and support as possible, and we're working closely with the FCC. So if this group is interested, we can see if we can get something on the calendar for really diving down into some of the concerns.
So Nicole, can you be clear with folks about what funding they can apply directly for to NTIA versus what they're going to have to apply through the state?
Yep. So essentially, the digital equity program, you can, there is, after this initial planning fund, there is a competitive grant. So that's where all sorts of entities can apply for funding directly from NTIA for digital equity programs. Everything else, well, and then middle mile projects, those are available to carriers that have to work in conjunction with our broadband office for those projects as well. But otherwise, the BEAD and digital equity funds are administered by the state. And so this is a really critical period where the stakeholders in this group can inform what the subgrant process is going to look like. So the state of Arizona, the administrative entity will be creating a basically subgrant programs to fund all of these projects, deployment as well as the adoption ones. So NTIA's role is to make sure that stakeholders feel heard and like they have a fair chance at receiving this money and that they're accounted for in the state's plan to make this funding, stretch as much as possible. Does that make sense? So, like a county or service provider, depending on how Arizona decides to set it up, would be eligible for different grants, with the state acting as a pass-through entity.
Thank you. Other questions or comments for Nicole?
So, I will mention that does include tribal governments. So tribes are able to, obviously apply for the tribal program, as well as middle mile and digital equity. There's a number of tribes that are applying for their own digital equity planning funds and probably intend to apply for the competitive ones. But in this case, for BEAD funding, they would be sub-grantees that would have to apply.
Other questions or comments for Nicole? So Nicole, there's a couple of things that I've been thinking about, and of course we'll probably address a lot of this when we get into our state planning. But some things I'd actually like to see happen even earlier. So one of the things that I've discovered, and I'm sure it's not new to most people, is that there are several of our providers here in this state, and I'm sure around the country, who actually have created their own digital inclusion initiatives. But there are many providers who have not. And many of the grants, when I had conversations with Jeff about the state funding, are we asking providers and our communities who are getting grants to include digital equity, digital inclusion in those grants. And at that time, the state did not provide the funding to do that. So we provided grants to 20 communities, but did not include digital inclusion. So I don't know, is that something that we're going to be looking at? And related to that, so it's both the community, that the communities as well as providers that now need to include digital inclusion. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
So really the key, and we'll touch a little bit on DE, the Digital Equity Program, which works in coordination with all of this, and that's really getting at that necessity, Steve, that we've talked about for a long time, which is without the inclusion piece, without the broadband adoption measures of affordability, skills, and that local support, then people aren't using broadband, even if it's available. But this slide is the BEAD portion that really mandates that digital equity piece because of affordability. So in BEAD, there's flexibility with what states can do, but they do have to require that their sub-awardees, these providers that are sub-awardees, have some form of a low-cost plan. And that can look really, really different. So that can be a matter of, requiring that those applicants participate in the ACP program. It can look like even the state using these funds to provide subsidies to defray costs for households that might not be eligible for ACP. It can look like, promoting structural competition if that's seemed to be needed. And then in the subgrantee, in the selection process, it can even be assigning different weights to different provider plans that do offer low-cost options. So there's a lot of flexibility in how states do it. So I think I would love for this group to get together once once the planning funds are underway, to really think critically about what low-cost plans are needed for Arizona, because fortunately there is there's the requirement, but Arizona does have some flexibility in making sure that it works for all of our partners, providers, and communities on the ground.
So a related question, Nicole, and I know Mala has addressed this in terms of E-rate, is the issue of cybersecurity and whether or not there is funding can be used to support cybersecurity. Again, we're providing connectivity and devices to a lot of people who've never even had a computer, much less would know anything about cybersecurity. Is that being addressed at all?
Yep. So that is all included in adoption. And if you look at it's a 98-page NOFO, it specifically lists things, like online safety, like adoption, like digital literacy skills, early and more advanced, all of these as critical to this deployment funding. So that's really exciting for us in digital inclusion, that there is that, codification of adoption. To be honest with you, this is, Jeff describes it as monopoly money, how much is available, but even so, we know it's not going to help us, reach every single household without a lot of creativity, just if we're just talking about infrastructure and trying to deploy networks. So it is a matter of kind of balancing and prioritizing, as well as working with the DE funds that are coming to the state, as these two have to coordinate. So there may be more of those adoption-minded activities under DE necessarily, but the key is that Arizona's considering this all as one holistic problem. But this is exactly the types of conversations, because if we hear and I know that you've long been an advocate of this, Steve, that Arizona wants to prioritize a cybersecure, I'm not sure that's the term, a cybersecure Arizona, that we have to make sure that the state is accounting for it.
So the last thing for me, Nicole, is, as you know, that, and Jeff has been a long-term advocate for creating broadband action teams in communities, which has enabled them to apply for grants and so forth. Is that something that's going to be a part of the planning process? Is that something that people will be able to use money for? Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yep, there is a lot of discretion in how the state's able to support those local networks, and even thinking of practitioner networks, local teams. So that is going to be a consideration. This is all, I will say, the state has this 270-day shot clock to come up with their initial proposal after doing this really extensive, let's see, I'll go back to this really extensive local coordination and outreach. And this is where all of that input is coming, that says, we need our broadband action teams funded. We need the state to support, whatever priorities these are. And NTIA has to confirm that the state did do a meaningful engagement here, that they have been accounting for those priorities. And in fact, all of the local actors get to challenge NTIA's plan, as that initial proposal is in review. So if there's something that's missing, if there's something unconsidered, there's room for remediation.
Thank you.
Nicole, as a company that does wireless, what avenue should we use to educate Jeff and the panel, your group, for analysis of with the new technologies that we've deployed, that we're deploying, that meet these kinds of requirements, to get them to be a little more flexible on, because in general, just to give you an example, our costs are about 1/5 the cost or less of fiber, with similar speeds at up to the 1 gig level. So how do we engage to make sure that you guys have all of the information that we have in terms of the latest technologies?
So one thing that I'm hoping to do is to support the broadband office in holding industry-specific meetings, meetings with all stakeholders, but especially with our industry partners. Unfortunately, with the timing of Jeff leaving, that's sort of on pause, but that's the intended forum that other states are using, is these kind of open workshops where providers are providing all these concerns, and that, you know, whatever the broadband office is, however they're taking those into account, that's the forum. And I don't know if that's something that we are going to help organize in coordination with Steve's and, you know, the ATIC network of all the providers here. But that's the course. And then, of course, as you've mentioned, taking those concerns directly to NTIA, because all of that gets elevated to the assistant secretary as well. You know, the NOFO is out, but there's a lot of considerations that can be made during implementation. So
Mark, do you
that's,
want to make any comment about that? Mark, you still there? Okay, moving on. Other questions or comments for Nicole?
Nicole, hi, this is Jan Schiller. I was just curious if you could comment on the role that NTIA has in terms of outcome management. And by that, I mean, like, they have 270 days to, you know, make the 5-year plan, and then they're going to do the implementation. Imagine that you're at the end of that 4-year implementation. And is there any way to like tie back to what they said in the plan versus, okay, now we've implemented, what do we do with the, you know, $100 million per state or $25 million per territory? Can you shed any insight on that?
Yep. So, you know, and it depends on the nature of the awardee. So, and what I mean by that is states that have existing broadband programs, or some that are just getting started from the ground up, that will determine the level of NTIA like additional support. Across the board, it's you know, it's FPOs as well as our technical assistance team that are working with states throughout implementation. And you know, as a standard, there's quarterly reporting that goes in. There's constant revision, even with the plans themselves. If there's different you know, different courses of action that have to be taken, there's room to revise. It does take quite a bit of paperwork, but there's, you know, there's room to pivot as necessary. So, you know, I can't speak to what 2026 is going to look like. Should there be extra funding, but throughout the whole year, there's an account of what is going to change. You know, does the original plan that, you know, had to come together rather quickly, is that even going to account for it? And, you know, we do have the ability to ensure that stakeholders, you know, throughout this plan are being represented. So it's not supposed to be one and done type of thing. There's supposed to be, you know, that careful review and forward planning throughout. You know, and I think you're also bringing up something that is a huge question, which is the sustainability of service. This is funding to help build these networks to get service out there, but then there's sustainability of how are we going to make sure that this service is paid for after this 5-year program. You know, and we of course know that this doesn't mean that these build projects are going to be starting, you know, the second Arizona gets the funds. You know, this takes a lot of planning. We have these supply chain issues. We know that, you know, some projects aren't even going to be getting off the ground for multiple years, and a lot is going to be changing in that time.
Thank you, Nicole. This was really informative. I appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments for Nicole?
Hey, Steve, Vaughn Croft in Tucson.
Yeah, go ahead, Vaughn.
I've been out in the rural areas doing some workshop training in Arizona and outside of Arizona. And I get out into the Indian reservation area, and we're talking about, as Rory brought up, which is, I think, a very good comment, the need for wireless is probably a strong need when you get into those kinds of areas. Just in my observation, my trainees that I've been working with are walking around with their smartphone cell phones, but at home they've got nothing more than maybe a television with rabbit ears on it. So I know that's a very crude example, but I think the wireless for the way out in a remote area, rural area, is a critical thing that we ought to think about. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, I'll continue to be joining these calls as often as I'm able to, But Steve, I really think that you've put together a great group of stakeholders and voices from all sorts of different corners of Arizona. And so that's one key that I'm hoping to support this, however the broadband office, gets developed from here is, tapping these existing groups to make sure that we're representing everybody. So let's talk about how we can, continue to have these types of conversations and just collect as much feedback as we can. If it has to get elevated up to NTIA, if we're, however we're making sure that our voices are included in this plan, and for how Arizona's allocating that money, we'll do what we've got to do. So I'm really proud to be part of this agency that's putting a lot of resources into local coordination and and making sure that every stakeholder feels that they've been heard multiple times, not just a one and done, but throughout this entire process. I know things are a little bit turbulent right now with as we're in a change of leadership and going into an election year. So as that settles down, I think we can really hit the ground running with bringing people together in a lot of different forums.
Hey, Nicole, just Vaughn, thanks for bringing that, pointing it out. Give me an example of of some of the challenges in Arizona. Have you reached out to Mylan Eaton from the Final Mile Project group on the projects he's funded?
Yep, I know Mylan, and I believe he's on this call. I haven't had
He just dropped off.
Oh, I see.
Oh, was he on there?
I haven't been able to
Okay.
to meet with him yet in this capacity, but that's all part of it, right? Is because anchor institutions are listed as priority locations that, even though in the NOFO it says unserved locations, underserved, and then anchor institutions, the plan itself is a simultaneous action plan for everybody. It's not necessarily linear, but yeah, he's going to play a huge role in helping inform the state.
Okay.
Nicole, hi, this is Kirk. Rory, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
It was Mark, Steve tried to cue Mark up there to talk about ATIC's intentions to host some provider workshops. And we did that at the Data Center Smart City Summit in April this year. And we intend to do it again at a minimum of our next event in January. But we're working on that schedule right now.
Great.
We want to propose something to the entire group. And Mark was unfortunately busy working on 3 simultaneous grant applications. So I caught him on Skype. But Steve, thanks for queuing that up. And ATIC and AZBSN will help coordinate some provider workshops.
That's fantastic. And, I'm really thrilled in this role that, I get to work with all of you and represent Arizona, but at a national level, I also get to showcase what we've got going on. So I've been just thrilled to talk about the digital inclusion work that's going on here, and then we can discuss the wonderful resource that ATIC is in bringing together all these provider voices. Not every state has been developing those relationships in the same way. So I'm really looking forward to working with you on that.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else for Nicole this morning? Well, Nicole, thank you very much. Glad to have you back in Arizona. Although you are
I never left.
in Washington, but
No. Yeah, I am based in Phoenix, and the goal, our directive is to get out to as many places in person as we're able to, and meet with as many folks as we can. So that's a benefit of all of us being located, in our states.
Right. Well, Nicole, you and I can get together offline and have some more conversation about how we can best engage this group and so forth.
Great. Thank you so much for the time, and I hope to connect with everybody.
You bet. Thank you. Okay, before we move on with some updates, we have a new person who has joined us. Raphael, do you want to introduce yourself quickly? Raphael, are you there?
Yes. Hi, Steve. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
You caught me by surprise there. Hi, everybody. I'm Rafael Arachaga, and I'm the Vice President of IT for Kodak Health Recovery and Wellness. Kodak is spelled CODAC for those of you wondering. I'm not part of a copier company, but part of a primarily behavioral health organization where we have 3 major clinics around Tucson and 1 methadone clinic that also serves behavioral health and court-ordered members. So I met Steve at the meeting, at a meeting on Thursday, which was very compelling, his story to come here and see what all this is about. And I'm glad that I met him, and I'm glad that I joined this meeting this morning. So thank you all. It is, I'm sure I'll see you all somewhere in person at some point in time, and we'll be able to point back at this day when you guys heard about me.
So Cindy, I think he's going to be particularly interested in talking to you about ACP. He is here in Pima County, and both is interested in ACP and also in providing some workshops and stuff. So I think he will be a good connection for you.
Yeah, could I speak to that just a second?
You bet.
I gave my first training last week for Goodwill. I'm actually, they asked me if I would train up their staff to understand how to walk through the application process. So I now have a recording of that I'm happy to share with people as well. But that's exactly this is the direction I've been hoping for a long time, is that community organizations are going to say, it's a strong enough need with the people that we serve that we need to train people up in our own staff to understand what the program is and how to get involved. So I'm really, really glad that's happening. And I would love, Raphael, if you would put your email in the chat, I'd grab it and give you a shout. Happy to.
And Cindy's also, so as I think you all know, that I send out the registration list after each of these meetings, which also has all everybody's contact information. Anyway, that's it. What time is it now? We have a little time for some quick updates. Yeah, I have a couple minutes. Molly, you want to do a quick update?
She dropped off, Steve.
Okay. Oops. Janet, Janet, I think you're still on. Do you want to say anything more about telemedicine?
Well, yes, I'm still on. Thank you so much. The news around our world is we start interviewing for our new director in another week, and we're very excited that we've got 3 candidates that we're going to be working with. I don't know who they are yet, but I'm excited to think that we're on that route. I would also want to keep our fingers on the pulse of any legislation or support we can muster for regarding the public health emergency, which is scheduled to end in December, and will change the face, hopefully will not change the face of billing, and we'll all still be able to use the phone and other modalities to see our doctors. But that's hot news in this neck of the woods. The other thing I wanted to share, and I don't know if everyone heard this announcement, but the very first week of August, the FCC announced that they would be doing a grant opportunity specifically for ACP outreach. And that might be something we would consider doing as a group, or there might be different entities here that would be interested in applying for that grant. There's no other information yet. The application, the actual opening has not happened, and therefore there's no due date. But it's something that we should all be keeping our eyes open for and be considering the opportunity to participate in.
Okay.
That's it for me. Thanks.
So Janet, I believe that the Arizona Telemedicine Council was meeting. Is that an open meeting? I know you had put information in there about that meeting.
Yes, it is an open meeting. It used to not be. It used to be members, about 20 members of the Arizona Telemedicine Council. And when we went virtual, we opened it up to the general public. And it's really a great meeting. It's updates from folks throughout the state that are involved in the telemedicine space, and the updates that are scheduled for this upcoming meeting will no longer include broadband, but certainly will include our Dr. Kim Shea, our super smart doctor nurse, who will be sharing results of the telehealth certificate program that she put together for advanced practice nurses. We will also have an update on telehealth from the director of telehealth from the VA. And definitely, if you're interested, it is listed as all the other events are on our webpage at telemedicine.arizona.edu. So please do join us if you'd like. It is a quarterly meeting, which I really look forward to doing in person again soon.
And that information is also included in the emails that I've been sending out to all of you.
Yes, thanks, Steve.
Okay. Moving on, so Mala's gone. Let's see, who else? Kelly Kersey, Arizona Department of Education.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yep, sure can.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Steve. My name is Kelly. I'm from the Office of Digital Teaching and Learning with the Arizona Department of Education. This morning, updates in our world. We continue working on that one application I had told everyone about a few weeks ago, probably a few times. It's that student data privacy, offering an affiliate membership to a platform that provides access to the information, the terms and conditions, training, everything for student data privacy as it relates to COPA, FERPA, the GDRP. So making sure that schools are able to keep up with that. That application did close on Friday, and we had almost 30 applicants from across the state, which is great. So now we are going to be reaching out to those schools to get that whole project launched, which is exciting. The cyber readiness program that we have been promoting remains open, and I'm sure everybody on this call knows about that from Arizona Department of Homeland Security. They have been great partners with us, and we have been sending that information to schools to make sure they're aware of it, and then helping Arizona Department of Homeland Security to get those schools prioritized so they can reach out for implementation. I think from our office, that's it that's happening right now in our world that might have interest or impact to anyone in this call.
Okay, thank you, Kelly.
Thanks.
Sophia, I think you're online. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, Kelly took care of everything. Thanks, Steve.
Okay. And I believe Mylon has dropped off. Shelby, are you still online? Do you have anything that you want to add?
Yes, I'm still online, but I don't have anything to add. I think Kelly covered everything.
Okay.
I actually forgot one thing. This Thursday, Mylon Eaton will host digital office hours for us. So he'll make that all about E-rate. So that will be Thursday, 11 to 1. I can put a link to that in the chat, but that's for schools, and he'll be providing a training from 11 to 1, or mostly it's office hours. It's not a training per se, but he's just helping people with their applications, filling out forms, answering questions, all of that good stuff.
Okay, thanks. And Kelly mentioned the chat. And so as I think you all know, I do send out the chat after the meeting, but if you have a need to do something sooner, you can actually download the chat before the meeting ends. So I just wanted to remind you about that. Okay, moving on. Cindy, do you have anything more in terms of digital inclusion?
I don't at this point, Steve, thanks.
Okay, Alana, if you're still on, you want to say anything more about your awareness campaign, your ACP awareness campaign?
No, thank you, Steve. I'm still here, but I can tell you that we have about 18,000 more signups in Arizona than we did prior to the campaign. So we're hoping that a good portion of that is because of the awareness campaign, which will continue until November 3rd. And then even after the official campaign is over, we're still going to be promoting ACP, doing what we can to help people sign up, working with ASU and their help center. So the only thing that really ends is, the billboards come down and things like that. But we'll still be doing a lot of work in Arizona to get people signed up. So That's it.
Okay. Sounds good. Let's see. So Aaron, I think you have dropped off. I don't think you're on anymore, are you? Okay, moving on. So Derek, do you have anything that you want to do an update with Sun Corridor?
Yeah, good morning, Steve. I'm here, but no big updates today. Thanks.
Okay. And I don't think Wes and Mylan already dropped off. So Roy, do you want to say anything more about what's happening with rural schools?
Yeah, so we've almost completed the tower up in out in Sonoyta. Should be live tomorrow when the fiber gets installed. Our guys, we built the tower last week, so it's ready to go. We're just waiting for fiber to be installed. Forest Lakes is getting and I know there's an auger showing up tomorrow to start digging the hole for that pole. So that one will be live in about 4 weeks, maybe 3. So I think that's, and then Holbrook's live. We're going to do a little bit more work up there, but that one's already up and running with customers on it. And Pima's starting to add add students on it now too. So most of the projects are either finished or about finished from the older final mile broadband disbursements. So.
Okay, thanks, Roy. So
Kurt, I'm sorry. I'd like to mention 2 other real quick things. Yeah, so Kurt, they called us for an interview and never used our name in the entire article for ABC 15. We're a little
No
disappointed in
way.
that. Yeah, I swear to God, they even asked us for pictures for Pima because we had that one going in a few weeks. So, but Mylan got some good press. The other thing is the ACP program. So we've been working on trying to implement that thing for about 4 weeks, and it is extremely challenging for companies to get up and running. And in fact, but we've now discovered bugs in it that we're having to deal with their technical people to try to fix. So there's still some bugs they're working out. So just letting you know, we should have it going in the next few days, but it was a little slow. It was a slow process.
Okay,
I'm done.
Anything else? So any other comments or announcements before we end for today? Going once, going twice. Well, I think we are done for today. And let's see. So if any of you want to stay online and kibitz for a while, we'll continue discussion. And if not, we'll see you all next week.